And hello all. This is going to be a little bit of a video documentary on my transformation from this Fender Modern Player Starcaster, it's not a Squire, it's actually a Fender, to something that's akin to how it sounded and looked in 1976. The Modern Player has some features that are a little different, a little newer, and quite frankly a little better in some areas. First of all, the old version, 1976 version, had a volume and tone for the neck pickup and then a volume and tone for the bridge pickup, but also the 76 version had a master volume, and it's located about right there. Where when they did the Modern Player version or series, they didn't bother to put the fifth pot there. Well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put a master volume in that because I've had cases where a master volume on a two pickup, two volume, two tone configuration came in handy. So what that means is I'm gonna have to drill through. I'm gonna have to drill through the arch top. This is the maple arch top with an alder center body that cuts down the hum, and I'm gonna put it somewhere right there, just like the original. There is a pick guard that comes in, a black one. It'll be butted up right next to it, pretty much how the original 76 version. The other difference is the 76 version actually had a bridge configuration similar to a Telecaster and a Strat, where the strings actually ran through it in three body. This is a Gibson style configuration. Now, because of the measurements that it would take to do that, I'm not going to do that. Only because I'm going to leave. If I try to put a Telecaster and a Fender, or I'm sorry, Strat bridge in here and try to drill holes and run it through the body, I'm going to leave some holes right there, and so the dimensions don't match. It's just not worth the effort, and I don't think I'm going to go through the trouble of doing that. It's not a problem drilling through it and putting string ferrules on the back. It's just a matter of lining the bridge up, and it's just not going to match. I'm going to have holes right there, so it's just not worth the effort. When I took all of the pots out, took the wide range humbuckers out, they did not feed right, by the way, through the F hole. None of it would feed through. They've got holes right here that will feed through to get to the body. As far as the electronics are concerned, these are called alpha pots. Get over here. 500K pots. These are alpha pots, which are mini pots, and that's about the only way that you can easily fit these things in there is to get minis. I want to put CTS pots, which is much better quality. The alpha pots are Korean, as well as these wide range humbuckers. We'll get to that. Hold on, we'll get to that in a second. We'll talk about that one in a minute. But these alpha pots are about the only thing that will easily fit in and out without having to take a Dremel tool and drill out here. Even some of the CTS smaller shaft pots have a huge struggle trying to fit in. I want to put CTS in there, okay? Even though I've had absolutely no issues with the alpha. They've been really good as far as the volume and tone. And they got, I'm not sure what the capacitors are that are on these things, but anyway, if I have to take a Dremel tool and drill through, I will, just to get CTS in there. And that's not gonna harm, it's just wood. So, and they did a good job, by the way, of shielding the inside of the cavity, which is really good. Didn't expect that out of an Asian rebuilt model, but it was good. Now let's talk about the humbuckers. These are wide range humbuckers from a company called G&B. They're out of Korea. And so what it is in the earlier 70s, Fender hired a guy named Seth Lover away from Gibson to build a clone of the humbucker, but he didn't want to make it a dark. Fender did not want to make this a dark, smooth tone humbucker like a Gibson. They wanted more of a jangly, clear tone like a Fender. So compromised, and what he did was he came up with this thing called a wide range humbucker. And what it is on the original one, they're basically two long, flip it over. They're basically two long single coils, and instead of the magnet running underneath like a typical humbucker, they were screw magnets that came in through the top. Okay, and what that did was create a very unique tone. It's the magnets were called Cunith, which is copper, nickel, and iron. They don't make them anymore because they're hard to manufacture. If you can find a 70s version of a Seth Lover wide range humbucker, you will pay several $100s, and I mean multi-$100, probably at least $500, $600 to $700 a piece for these things. But there are manufacturers out there that will create these, that have created these things that are very close in tone, and have created, they may not be the QNF, but they may be some kind of Alnico 2 or 5. They'll have the screw pole pieces. So anyway, but here's the deal. This is not a typical wide range humbucker, even though it fits. They're bigger, by the way. If you try to measure it with a typical humbucker that goes in a Gibson, you'll find this is a little bit bigger. But if you unsolder this and pop the top, what you're going to find out is a typical humbucker underneath, and it's smaller. So they filled in the space around the side with wax. Not only to fill in the space to fit in here in a bigger wide range humbucker cover, but also to cut down on the feedback. And so Fender's Mexican versions of this wide range humbucker that you'll get right now in the Mexican reissue ones, and in fact what I've got right now on my 72 reissue Telecaster, same size. They're bigger, but if you pop the top, you'll find out a typical humbucker, a cheap humbucker that's underneath, that's just potted and waxed to fill in this spot. Here's the dilemma. This is a Korean wide range humbucker, clone, so to speak. Its sound is great. I love it. Its tone is warm, it's smooth. If I go through the cost of trying to upgrade this to a real clone, like from Lawler or from Mojo Tone or from the Creamery out of England, I'm going to pay a couple $100 a piece for these things, and that's not the goal. The goal is to go cheap. I wanted to do this cheap as possible. So I don't put a lot of money in this, but I want to mod this guitar as cheap as possible so that, and to have a tone and a look as close to 1976 as possible. So I'm at a dilemma. I love the sound of these things. Absolutely, from the bridge to the neck. They're nice, they're warm, they're smooth. And I'm at a dilemma whether to go ahead and keep these in here or to spend a little money on an upgrade to make it sound more like a Jazzmaster. Because that's really, I've heard the tone of these things, the real things that go in here, and they sound a lot like a Jazzmaster, which is not, I own Jazzmaster. They're not really that smooth as far as dark, warm tone like a Gibson. These are. And you know, and people who know me know that I'm a Fender diehard devotee. I want the smooth tone of a Gibson with Fender on the headstock. And so I'm at a dilemma whether to replace these or not. Stand by for that one. So I've just got to take a few days to think about it. I've got a guitar tech that I'm going to go talk to this weekend, kind of get his feedback on it and see what he thinks. But let's go back to the wiring. So more to follow on this, what I'm actually going to do. I don't know if I'm actually going to keep these or not. If I do, this guitar has a nice, warm, smooth tone, almost like a Gibson 335. With these even though these are relatively cheap pickups, they still have a nice, warm, woody tone. All right, but if I replace them with real wide-range humbucker clones, like from companies that manufacture these things that sound very close to 1976, it's going to sound more like a Jazzmaster with a lot of sparkle in it and not as much warmth. So there you go. I'm at a dilemma. Stay tuned, more to follow. I don't know what I'm going to do. The wiring here is just chintzy. I hate it. Everything about it. What I did find out, I really don't know at first whether the grounding wire just got disconnected, but the grounding wire, by the way, is wired to this post on the bridge, and it looks like it's cut, like bona fide cut. And so when I first started playing this thing, I noticed there was a lot of hum and feedback, and I don't know where that came from, other than the fact that it may not have ever been wired in, and I may not have had a good grounding situation. So when I put a noise gate on my amp, the hum went away, but if I didn't, it was a very loud hum between these two pickups, more here than here. So All right. So the other difference between this reissue and the original, the neck joint. The neck joint on the original was very much poorly fitted. And in fact, if you see videos and they show you close-ups, there was no good neck joint on these things. It was just, there was a lot of space between here and there. And Fender did a really good job on the reissue to really make that neck joint fit really, really well. Going up and down the neck, the 70s version had a bullet truss rod. This one does not, which is fine. And the 70s version had a string tree that kind of went across. It was long, and it encapsulated the bottom 3 strings, which is not a big deal. So that's actually a vintage string tree, but it's not representative of what they had in the 70s. I've been trying to find one, and I just can't. I'll keep hunting. The other thing I want to mention about the tone knobs, I hate these things, cheap plastic. But what I did order some that are much more representative of what they had in the 70s, which is kind of a flip-flop in color. It's actually a little bigger, kind of a witch hat type style, but it's dark on top and silver on the bottom. And so it's very representative of what they look like in the 70s. And so I'll replace those, and eventually, of course, up here